you enjoy watching Jesus or Muhammad, please contact us and let us know. We need your prayers and your financial support to keep this program on the air. Give us a call at 248-416-1300.
All right, welcome back. We only have a little less than half an hour in the program. They say we got a ton of calls. A ton's 2,000 pounds. I hope we don't have quite 2,000 calls. Do you have any comments before the next caller?
Yeah, I think the reason we all like Manu is that he comes across as very honest in his approach. We think he's wrong on a lot of things, but you never get the impression that he's trying to deceive us or something. And Manu, based on his study, concludes that the Quran basically goes back to the time of Muhammad, and that the Bible basically is what was in the original writings. And I would agree. What we have is a simple fact that any time human beings are going to be in the process of passing down something through copying, people are going to misspell words, things like that. If the process is memorization, as in the case of the Quran, people are going to forget things. People are going to die when they're the only ones that have something memorized. And so passing these things down is an imperfect process. The only point here is that Muslims, the typical Muslims, the ones that we encounter on the street, say this Quran has been perfectly preserved down to the letter, no flaw, and it doesn't matter what evidence you present to them, they just stick to that. And then they say, but the Bible, it has, spelling variants and things of that nature, and so it's completely unreliable. You can't trust it at all. When we have a more honest approach, and we recognize that scribes do make mistakes and so on, and that the Quran and the Bible both basically go back, that the core of the message was preserved accurately, then we're faced with a very different kind of problem. You see, you can't just say this book is the Word of God and that's completely corrupt based on differences in the text or something like that, because when human copying is involved, the Quran and the Bible are basically in the same boat. So what we have to do is say, which book is more likely to give us accurate information about Jesus? Because what the two books say is very different when it comes to Jesus. One book says he's the divine Son of God who died on the cross and rose from the dead. The other book says he just claimed to be a prophet and pointed everyone to God and didn't believe that he was the divine Son of God. So these are presenting very different pictures. They're both in roughly the same boat when it comes to handing them down through scribes. But what do we have? We have to ask which book, since they give different pictures, is more likely to give us accurate information about Jesus. And the New Testament, which is filled with first-century documents from a number of different eyewitnesses, all of which give the same picture of Jesus as the divine Son of God who died on the cross for sins and rose from the dead. Everyone from the first century agrees on this message. And then Muhammad comes along 6 centuries later with a completely different message. Who in the world are we going to believe? What on earth could make you say we're going to believe Muhammad? Well, nothing, which is why Muslims have to make things up, which is why Muslim leaders have to mislead their people into believing that there's all kinds of evidence and that the Quran has been perfectly preserved and that it's a scientific masterpiece. They have to invent all of these things to come up with some excuse for trusting this book over the first century documents. But when we're honest, we recognize there's no reason to trust this book, and therefore we have to go to the first century documents. And if you do that, why aren't you a Christian?
Yeah, quick question for Manu. He's not on the line with us, or anyone else who believes what Manu said. Look, the New Testament quotes copiously. It quotes, there's many exact quotes coming from the Old Testament. Now, he just told us that our Bible is for the most part right, for the most part. Why then, if the Quran is just another revelation in the series of revelations, is there not at least one quote, word for word, in the Quran from our Bible, especially the entire New Testament? Just one quote of any length whatsoever. You would think there'd be at least one if our Bible is mostly right.
We have a lot of calls. There's another important thing that goes with what you're saying, he's saying. Muslims love Bart Ehrman. He's become the darling of Muslim apologists and propagandists.
They have to go to a liberal Christian to get some halfway decent arguments.
But notice what Manu said. He believes that the core of the Quran remains intact, but admits that there can be variant readings. And corruption, although a hard term, that's the term Muslims use, in some sense the Quran is corrupted. Since Muslims appeal to Bart Ehrman's logic goes like this. if God inspired His words, then He'd preserve those words. Since there are variant readings of the New Testament, and we don't know what the original words say in all places, although He admits we can reconstruct the original New Testament to at least a 96% degree of certainty.
And this is a terrible critic. I mean, now he would consider himself probably agnostic or
happy agnostic.
But he's a horrible critic of the Bible, and he admits 96%.
Yes, we can reconstruct the original New Testament with the science of textual criticism. But he says since we don't have all the words intact or know what all the words are, that means God didn't inspire it, because if He did, He'd make sure He'd preserve all His words without variant readings. How does that apply to the Quran? Since now Muslims are admitting the Quran has variant readings, then according to Bart Ehrman's logic, the Quran cannot be from Allah, because if Allah bothered to reveal the Quran, then He'd preserve every single word and not allow variant readings to creep in and passages to be missing. So Muslims, are you going to be consistent? If you're going to quote him, reject the Quran being from Allah. However, me and David don't reject the Quran as the Word of God because of variant readings. We reject it for other reasons. Right? So we're consistent. We're not saying toss out your Quran because of variant readings, because if we're going to be honest, we'd have to do that with the Bible. In spite of variant readings, we are saying, for the record, we believe both the Bible and the Quran contain the original meaning, message, of the authors of these books. We trust that, hey, when I read the Quran, I know this is what Muhammad uttered to his community. It at least retains the message, if not the exact wording. We feel the same way about the Bible, so we're not tossing out the Quran because of variant readings. But since you quote Bart Ehrman to attack the Bible, be consistent, apply his logic to the Quran, reject it, otherwise you're inconsistent. And if you're inconsistent, you're not being honest.
Very good. With that, let's take the next caller right now. You're on the air with Jesus or Muhammad.
Hello.
Yes, hello, you're on the air.
Oh, well, good morning, gentlemen. Good to see you. God bless you and your work. You've got an awesome show.
God bless you.
Thank you, thank you. I'm sitting in a Pal Talk chat room right now, and it's called Islam Exposed by Muslim Hadith.
By Muslim who? Islam Exposed by who?
Thunderbank.
Okay. Okay.
It's owned by stillstanding_2.
Okay.
Here's you were talking earlier about abrogations in the Quran in Sahih Bukhari, Volume 4, Book number 56, 754, narrated Ibn Abbas. The Prophet was the most generous of all the people, and he used to become more generous in Ramadan when Gabriel met him. Gabriel used to meet him every night during Ramadan to revise the Quran with him. Okay, so if the Quran was this preserved text that's in heaven, here it's saying that Gabriel came and revised it every year with Muhammad. And then in Surah 2, 106, it says, we do not abrogate any of our verses of the Quran or cause it to be forgotten, except that we substitute it with something better or similar. And then, what really gives them a big problem is Surah 22, 52, and 53, where it says that Muhammad received satanic words, and he ascribed those to Allah. And then in 53 it says he makes Satan's interjections a temptation for those whose hearts suffer from the disease of hypocrisy.
Yes.
This is pretty much saying that there are satanic words that remain in the Quran as a temptation to hypocrite Muslims. So now they don't know, a Muslim can't know if what he's reading is the words of Allah or the words of Satan.
And that's even assuming that the Quran is exactly what Muhammad said, which is a big assumption. So what Muslims need to understand, what you're saying is, even if we have the Quran that Muhammad actually spoke, according to your argument, some of it could be from Satan and not from Allah.
Exactly, exactly. Now, to go on, they've got a big problem in the Quran. If you look at Surah 359, he's talking about the birth of Jesus being
like Adam,
being compared to the birth of Adam, the birth of Isa being compared to the birth of Adam. That Allah merely uttered the word "be" and created him. But then in Surah 66:12, this really causes them a problem. It says 66:12. Another example is in the life of Mary, the daughter of Imran, who guarded her chastity, and into whose womb we breathed of our spirit, and who testified to the words of her Lord.